We're going to be introducing to you some technology solutions for the carbon markets. We're going to do a presentation, excuse me. We're going to do a presentation that'll be written in French. I'll be speaking over it in English if that's okay. And when we do the recorded demonstration, that will be in French for those who are fluent in French. So anyway, je m'appelle Wayne Sharp. There's my French done. I'm originally from Australia, but I'm based in London. I'm the founder, CEO and owner of Carbon Trade Exchange. And the other person presenting is Lee Barton, who's my Chief Operating Officer from our office in Australia. The technology is designed and built in Australia, but delivered globally 24/7. We don't have to tell anyone at this event about the issues revolving around climate change or the impacts that are already here that are affecting everybody, particularly in the African nations. And the opportunities from the Paris Agreement are also obvious, which is the reason why everybody's here. A lot of people don't understand, however, that the Paris Agreement gives the nations the right and perhaps even the obligation to take responsibility and even ownership of the carbon origination in their markets. The amount of money that's got to transfer from developed nations or high impact nations in terms of emission footprint to developing nations is huge. And this commercial opportunity is part of what we intend to show you how we can help give a technology solution that delivers revenue to the nations that can originate projects around the world and particularly in Africa. In the carbon markets, there are two types of markets. One is an allowance market, which is allowances issued by government. These are targeting large emitters and trying to get them to reduce emissions by cap and trade schemes. The second market is the voluntary carbon market. And the voluntary market is issued by projects, and the projects are on the ground in your nation. When you talk about Paris Agreement, transfer of credit is ITMOs. ITMOs are produced in exactly the same way as a voluntary carbon credit. That is that they're produced by projects on the ground, like the renewable projects that we were talking about earlier, forestry projects, land-based, waste to energy, all those different types of projects. One carbon credit is 1 tonne of CO2 or its equivalent gases. And regardless of the different credit standards that are out there today, all of them use the same measurement. So methane capture, for example, will be 30 credits for every tonne of methane because of its forcing factor as a CO2, as a greenhouse gas. The major credit standards internationally are the UNFCCC CDM, which you're all probably familiar with, Gold Standard, VCS. We also trade other international standards. However, each nation can use either those credit standards or others, and it can produce credits in its own registry or in a centralised collaborative registry between African nations. The value of carbon credits is enhanced when you put more sustainable development goals in. There is no single price for carbon. Anyone who says that isn't being truthful in my view. Carbon credits are valued based on all of these different things that you see here, where they're from. And African credits have a very high value, I might add. Also the type of credit, the credit project type. Obviously renewable energy credits tend to be cheaper because they're already making money from energy. Forestry credits tend to be more expensive because that's all they do is forestry. So we don't do hybrid credits, we only trade the credits directly from projects. The reason why companies buy these credits, whether it be for voluntary purposes, is for these reasons you see here. Corporate social responsibility, they're now calling it, or ESGs become the latest thing. The reality is that all of these are just the drivers behind why companies need to do it. Now countries have to do it if they want to meet their NDC targets. That's why you need to create carbon credits and turn them into ITMOs. For the companies that are doing this, you've got to remember the credits will be cancelled. The investment is in the projects. The carbon credits are issued and then they're cancelled to negate someone else's emissions. And that's exactly how the Paris Agreement is worded in Article 6 for carbon trading between countries. The Danske Bank story I won't bore you with. The reality is that the over-the-counter market that has been the driver of the global carbon markets for the last decade, 15 years, is run by over-the-counter brokers. It's fraught with danger and risk and lost opportunity. I just spoke to someone from the DRC who said that they sold credits to that were trading now today at 18 euros, and they sold them to Shell for $3. So the way we are going to operate is we're going to make sure that the 18 euros goes to the project in Africa, not to some huge conglomerate in Europe. Our mission for Carbon Trade Exchange, which is part of our group, is to make sure it's secure, transparent and simple. And every part of it is going to be transparent, including the fees. The things that you see around the outside here are the things that are done within the registry. So, of course, regardless of which credit standard they use, they're all using different registries. The technology for the registries isn't the driver, it's the credit standard accreditation. But all of this process has become very expensive and there's big, long delays. So as a result, what we have proposed is that each country can have its own registry, or they can have one registry for regional forestry, like the Congo Basin could have. So therefore, what can happen then is that we can make sure that you reap these advantages. I'm going to go back to this screen for a second, just sorry about that. I hit the wrong button. What happens is, in order to trade the carbon credits, they have to go through a rigid process, and in our registry technology, that process is built in, so that you can't take any shortcuts. What happens once the credits are issued, they're escrowed, so they can't be sold anywhere else while they're listed for sale. And we're going to show you a live demonstration of all of this in just a few minutes. So this PowerPoint is just to lead up to the live demonstration. When the credits are listed on CTX, they are escrowed so that that protects the buyer. What it means, there can't be any risk of double selling or non-delivery of the credits. The buyer must be in funds on the exchange, which means that that takes all the risk away for the seller, for the project, so that they can guarantee they're going to get paid, and we deduct our 5% transaction fee, which is how we make money, from the proceeds of the transaction and send the balance directly to their bank account. So what this means is that there's lots of benefits in this process for the buyers and the sellers. All the risks are taken out so that it can be done electronically and seamlessly and transparently. The most important part, of course, is that if you have a registry that's operated under government supervision, not necessarily run by government, but supervision, the only part they have to do is to approve the issuance of ITMOs, which means they'll transfer from their NDC to another developed nation's NDC. Otherwise, they can be sold internationally as voluntary credits anyway. So I'm going to quickly switch, Lee, to the demo.
It's on the USB.
Right.
Go to the folder, yep, and you'll see it's the
demo. Recorded
yep,
demo.
that one at the bottom there. Yep.
Right. Click on it. Go
yep.
to it.
That one.
Sorry. Okay.
So we have sound. Do you have a jack?
What is the mic or audio? No, you need to plug this. Can I unplug this?
No.
It's the HDMI.
No. What about here?
No.
No? Okay,
Should be
so
here.
then I can do it like this, and we play it through the microphone.
I think we'll have interference.
Let me see. Let's try. Let's see. think you sorted it out.
Yeah, it's turned down. But you can play. Turn this on.
Let's see if it works. Which one, Lee?
So open up the folder that says print, not used yet, that one. And then very bottom, that one.
Okay, I'm just going to try and work out how our sound is working here. It doesn't seem to want to work. I may have to do this verbally and describe it to you. I think.
You've got the slide there instead. Do
Right,
that.
okay.
So once I'm going to go back one folder and go to the version 4. It's, yep, so you've got version, or even version 4, JT. So you've got PowerPoint, right, that you can run. The bottom one.
Okay. 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 Sorry about this. The system didn't quite like our audio, so we're going to run through this slightly differently, if that's okay. No. Okay. So the registry technology that we are introducing enables countries to do all the necessary documentation for the projects, which is important for the international markets. People want to know what credits they're buying and where those credits are coming from. Apologies, this has got to be in English, but that we play the cards we're dealt, as they say. So this demonstration is linked between the exchange registry and a copy of Carbon Trade Exchange, and we're going to show you an actual live demonstration in just a moment. The registry has one national registry administrator who's the senior person at the top. That can be outsourced to private enterprise or be run by government. They can have, within that, they can have regional credit standards, domestic or international, and they can have their own administrators to start the documentation. Then each country can have its own participant organisation administrators. The process on the registry runs through the entire carbon credit life cycle. So what that means is that every credit goes through all the verification stages. The fees that are applicable go to the nation or whoever's running the registry on their behalf, not to us. So we have a licensed technology, and the registry is run by the government or their approved registry administrators, and then they generate the income from the fees where they decide they are and how much they are. The most important thing is that the credits go through all that verification process before they're issued and available for sale. That would include whether they're voluntary or ITMO credits sold internationally to other countries. Each registry can have access to a live version of the registry through its own website, which can be in any language. So that means that they can go and look at the documentation, see everything about that particular project, which you'll see in just a moment, and they can go and look. Every document is available for the public to view or the buyer to view, directly linked from the registry itself. We know where the project is, we know what it is, what it's doing, and what its emission reduction activity is. All that documentation is in the registry so that the buyers know exactly what they're getting and where they're getting it from. So this is a very important part of the confidence for the international markets, and also to make sure they're fully verified credits and there can be no possibility of decreditation or invalidation, and they're acceptable for the international markets. The registry administration can run at multiple levels, and each level is decided by whoever the national administrator is. So what that means is that they can go and decide who does what. They can determine who has what roles. We don't do any of this. We just provide the technology. We're not trying to run the registry. And the registry members, each one of them has access to all their own data and information online automatically. So what we're going to do in a moment, we're going to show you a registry client who's going to list their credits to the exchange, as you're seeing now on this recorded demo, and then we're going to do a live transaction on the exchange platform in a moment. Each part of the registry process is done step by step through the technology, so they can't take shortcuts. What this does, it helps the registry administrators who might be less experienced, and we can train them on how to use the technology. So each part of what you're seeing here is on a live platform that's been pre-recorded, and we'll show you in a moment the live one. The most important thing is once the project is ready to have credits issued, then they're issued into the registry, and they're available then for the client, the project itself, to do what they need to do with them. Obviously, it depends on what type of credits that you want to use, and that's entirely at the nation's discretion. When it comes through to the process of doing it, every part of this is fully electronic. It's all simple to use. Of course, it takes a little bit of training and practice, of course. We're not saying you could do it from day one, but we will do the training to make sure that everyone knows how to do whatever they need to do each time. As the registry administrator goes through these procedures, they can then get the credits issued, and then they're available for sale domestically or internationally. If they're sold domestically, that means it's a positive towards the nation's NDC. If they're sold internationally and they've been approved as an ITMO, then you have a corresponding adjustment, and that's all recorded in the registry, which means there won't be any concerns when the reports are put through to the UN. Obviously, the credit creation is done by the registry administrator. When they're activated, that's when they're available for sale, and then they can be listed on the exchange for sale, which Lee will show you in just a moment. And then finally, when you get to the transfer of the credits, and I'll just skip through a few pages here if you don't mind. When they're sold on the Carbon Trade Exchange platform, they can get a cancellation certificate when the credits are finally cancelled. Now, this can be issued for voluntary credits or for nations as well, to confirm that they've done what they said they would do. And then fees are entirely at the nation's discretion. So I'm just going to get Lee to come up now, if I may. Yes. Oh, you want the, yep. Okay, I know. I've got it pre-saved here. Right. And then let me just log into the test platform. I'm still there. Right. Okay. You should be able to do. Just reload that. Just reload that. When it shut down, it disconnected me from the bloody... We've suddenly got a bad connection. There we go. Righto. Sorry, we've just got some slow internet.
Yeah, apologies, we have slow internet. Hello, I'm Lee Barton and I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the GEM group of companies. Apologies for the technical issues we've had. I'm just going to, and it appears the internet's a little bit slow, so... Maybe. Yeah, it's still... It's still refreshing. Yeah, it's very slow. It's in the front of my bag, Wayne. Internet, yeah. No internet. We're on the Connect Plug and Play, and it was yeah, and it was perfect. It was perfect, yeah. Can't help with internet. Yep. There's not much we can do about it. Yeah. When it comes.
Ladies and gentlemen, my apologies, but it appears that the plug-and-play internet suddenly decided to disconnect us. I'm guessing it's probably happened to a few people. We've got a portable device. Here it comes, Lee. It's just come up now. Lee? I think we just had a brief interruption to the program. Righto. There you go.
So, I'm just going to log in as one of our participant project proponents that has had a project certified. It's a test scenario. So this is a test registry, so it's not a real one, so it's just test data, just for the purposes of showing you how easy it is once the credits have been certified. So these are my projects here, and under here we've got the credits that have been issued against those projects. So within this piece of registry technology, we can either transfer credits to another project, another registry account holder, or we can list them for sale on CTX, which has an interface built between the two applications. So here I have 70,000 credits, of active credits available in my account that I can initiate a transfer to CTX for sale. So transferring 50,000 credits at a price of $12.75 to list them for sale on CTX. So depending upon the internet, that will take not very long, or up to 30 seconds, to list them for sale on CTX. And if I go into CTX and refresh, we should then see them at the top of the screen in our test CTX environment. So, and there we are. So these are listed as an ITMO because that's our registry technology. And we can see here that's also Nigeria. These ones are, so it's 50,000 at a price of AUD. Now this is Mr. Sharp's account, which is not my account obviously. So for the purposes of this, Wayne can actually, he can purchase some or all of these credits. So I'm going to buy 25,000, 25,000, click OK. Will then ask me for my password. submit. So what's happening now is that CTX is processing that transaction, and it's transferring the credits from the seller's account in their registry to the buyer's account in the registry, and it's transferring the money from the buyer to the seller, their CTX account. And those funds are available immediately, and depending upon what the seller has chosen as their proceed of sale channel, they can be paid directly to their own bank account, or they can be held on their CTX cash account for further buying, or to make a request for those funds to be transferred when they wish. So now, so we can see the transaction, so the quantity still listed on CTX for sale is reduced to 25,000. And if we go over here, so CTX has initiated an email to the buyer and the seller detailing the transaction itself, and also in the transaction log, and if we have a quick look at the registry here, I'll just refresh here, and you'll see that my credit holdings at the registry level has been reduced by the quantity just sold. There we go. So we can see that I have sold 25,000 credits, and I've still got listed for sale 25,000 credits. And I can then, I could delist if I wish to. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lee. What you've just seen is a transaction. My account is in London, Lee's account's in Australia, and the technology's online, and we're here in Egypt. So, and that's as quick as it can possibly happen anywhere in the world. So we've listed credits, we've transferred them. If I was to open up my emails in a moment, which I will do, then you'll see also that I've got an email detailing exactly what it is that I purchased, right? So all of this is instantaneous trading. The only real part that requires some effort is to get the registry set up, which is mostly about getting an agreement in place between us and the country that's going to host the registry, or the group that's going to host it on behalf of multiple countries, and of course then to train the people, which is not that complicated. Instead of, at the moment, most of the credit standards are using international behemoths, conglomerates I would call them, to do all the registry documentation and all of that type of work that doesn't have to be done in Germany or Switzerland or America, right? And if you see here, so you can see here now, hopefully, if my emails update quickly enough, which it doesn't look like it's going to do, I can probably show you on my phone that the emails come through for anyone who'd like to see it, but the reality is you'll get activation notices and UAT information to indicate exactly what has or hasn't happened. Sorry, it's just updating it now. No, it's, sorry, the internet's too slow, so I won't bore you with any more of that. Oh, here we go. Look at that. And that there, if I can just open it, that's the trading statement which I just did, that Lee did through my account. And inside that trading statement, this just happens to be the same currency. If it was a cross currency, you'd see the FX rate differentiation as well. The buyer and the seller and CTX all get an immediate email instantly when the transaction's completed. So everything you've just seen, this is not hypothetical, it's not Mr. Blockchain or crypto or any of that fluff. This is real deliverable technology which you can use any internet connection and any device. And if we can do it here, you can do it pretty well anywhere. So we know we'd like to support Africa, and we hope that you guys will feel that this is worthy of your focus and attention to try and generate revenue for your countries and to create new jobs and new project opportunities in various different nations. And we'd be happy now to take any questions that anyone might have. Sounded like I blew the place up. Okay. If anyone has any questions, if you'd rather not ask them publicly, you're welcome to come and talk to Lee or myself privately, and we're available to. Lee.
I am Alfred from Chad. I have one question. So I want to understand clearly the relationship between the seller and the buyer. And from your side, do you have any cost to manage this platform?
Thank you. Well, look, first of all, one of the key parts about international carbon trading is that the counterparties are anonymous to each other. So that, and of course what that means is you don't necessarily know who the buyer or the seller are, but Carbon Trade Exchange has done due diligence on every participant in the exchange platform. So if you're a project selling credits, you have to have a registry account and a Carbon Trade Exchange account in order to do what Lee just did, to list the credits for sale. For the buyers, they have also gone through all the KYC, anti-money laundering checks to see that they're legitimate, and they have to also link their bank account so they can transfer money to put it in on deposit into their account before they purchase. There are costs, of course. The sellers pay 5% of the proceeds of the transaction. So if you're selling a credit for $10, you're going to get $9.50. We deduct 50 cents, and that's our commission for the sale. So there's a membership fee, which is nominal. It's $1,200 a year. The main revenue for us is from transaction fees from selling the credits. So if we don't get a sale, we don't make any money. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks for the presentation. Question is on regards of the supervision of all the procedures. We know that some of this share in terms of the credit revenue that you're selling, we are driving like more than 0.5% for communities that even don't have the connection to that technology or even access like or digital literacy to have access to that. That's my first question. How? I think if you. Yeah, my first question in a nutshell will goes to how do you really supervise the outcomes of that transaction. The second will be how do you is that mandatory to have a regulatory board on the country that is selling or is entering on that trade process. So most of the countries don't have even voluntary carbon credit markets on their own. They do international certifications, and international certification boards, they rely on very different standards. This drive me to, okay, how do you rate the tone of carbon, equivalent carbon costs? Because we are varying in terms of different standards for that kind of certification. And sorry to add a third question that will be, okay, are you really basing all that framework that you're establishing on the country with with the right setup of legislation and alignment of all the stakeholders on the country?
Thank you. Can you hear me? The first thing is that in relation to particularly Indigenous landowners or localised communities, our job is to trade the carbon credits, but at the national level, there's two ways they can deal with that. One is that part of the credits can be split when they're issued. So the nation is entitled to keep 5% of the credits that are issued anyway under the new variation in Article 6 that happened in Glasgow. So 5% of every credit issuance can go into the National Registry account. The local community groups can do one of two things. They can either rely on whoever's the registry government administrators to distribute the money, yeah, or they could just open an account which, let's assume they need international finance, right? Which is a reasonable assumption that they're going to need government or international finance. And it's a local community organisation that's running a project, say a solar project, for example. Then what you would do is you could split the credits into three different components. The government can take its 5%. You might say that 25 or 50% or whatever the number would be given into one account for the local community group, and the balance would go to whoever the financiers were. Either way, the local community group can then control the sale of the credits itself, and then they have to distribute the funds accordingly. So we're not going to distribute the money, but we can distribute the credits. We pay the money to the credit owner, no matter who that is. So if you sell the credits to someone on an agreement basis and they own the credits, then they would list them for sale, which is what I said what happened with Shell. That project in Africa sold the credits to Shell before they were issued for $3. They paid all the issuance fee costs and sold them for 18 euros. I can tell you it didn't cost them 15 euros to do the issuance. That's for sure. The second part of the question is about the organisation. We have followed exactly the same procedures that are used for the CDM program, Gold Standard, Vera VCS. The CDM validation and methodologies are all public domain information, and that's already built into our registry. So that 3,500 methodologies in the CDM program at the UN are already immediately available, which means everything that's ever been created just about has come from that originally anyway in the carbon markets. So the national registries don't have to be global market experts. They can just follow the same protocols to get started. Do the easy ones first, the renewable energy, the forestry, the RED+, all these things are relatively easy and well documented. And all the procedures, the documentation, I can tell you now that 9 times out of 10, when some German company charges $100,000 to produce a document, they've just put a bit of additional information in to a document they already had and pressed print or whatever. So there are people within the African countries who have this expertise, or they would happily come back from where they're working in London or Bonn or Switzerland or America to work in the African communities. The final part is, how is it regulated? Well, look, the Paris Agreement gives the right to the country to take responsibility for its own actions. It doesn't need big regulation to run this sort of program, because these are carbon projects, and if they're not legitimately done through the registry, then no one would buy them anyway. So this is just a way of empowering the national communities to create the projects, to do the credit registration, get them into the international market. Of course, if they're sold as a voluntary credit, then maybe a degree of risk. The government only has to approve it if it's an ITMO, which means it's going out into someone else's. But the NDC targets, how are you going to report them if you don't have a record of everything that's happening? Because you're claiming a certain amount of emission reductions in order to get the benefit of international finance. So if you want to get it, you've got to have a record of what you've done, what you're doing, and what you're reducing, and then what you've sold. So that's what this is really all about. So the registry is set up in such a way that the government controls costs. It could be no cost for the regional communities. There could be no issuance fees, maybe no account fees. So we don't take any part of the registry fees, only the exchange trading fees. The government just pays a fixed fee per year for the registry to us, which isn't a great deal, $150,000 a year, to produce possibly tens of millions of dollars of export revenue. Now, in the local communities, the registry technology can do micro projects. It could issue 100 tonnes or 500 tonnes to a small community village doing a solar project or a water project or something like that. So it doesn't have to be big international, all singing, all dancing, hundreds of thousands of hectares of forestry stuff. It's up to the government to support those projects, and the technology can do it. Hope that answered your questions. Well, if there's nothing else, I want to thank everyone for your attention. Sorry we were a little late, we had a few technical hitches, but it's Egypt. Africa's better. Oh.
Alan. My name is Alan from ONG Humanitas from London. I'm working hand in hand with local community. I'm working hand in hand with local community in Congo Basin. We would like to know if the price of registration for the year it will be the same for each country and for local community. What is the impact of the local community, such as indigenous, who has got enough land, but they don't know how to trade it on the carbon market? Is it possible to help them, to guide them a specific tools so that everybody will be a win-win? Thank you.
Thank you. I guess my answer is very similar to the last one, but it's slightly different, and that is that each of these communities and smaller regions within nations, we need a centralised registry because there's a little bit of administrative support required. So that's why it's the national responsibility or the intranational responsibility within the region, like the Congo Basin or what's it called, Confid could set up a registry for the whole region, for example, right? And that could just focus on forestry if they wish. That's no problem for us. The point is that the technology doesn't have to cost anything for the bottom end of the user scale, right? So for the community services, that should be part of government's responsibility. They're taking part of the credits that are issued anyway. It's their responsibility to help export carbon credits to meet their Paris Agreement opportunities and commitments. So the bottom line is they have to do something, or they're just going to be left out in the cold again, which has happened to Africa often enough, I think. So it's about time we started to get the governments to do something, which is what they're all here to do. That's what this event is about, and what this stand is about, is to helping make sure that everyone understands why we're doing the action and how to do the action. It still requires a little bit of government support to get the registry in place, whether it be a regional registry or a national registry. But after that, all the costs are going to be borne. They're not that big a cost. So it's really just a matter of them taking responsibility and getting on with the action, in my view.